What's up, Dowd fam? I'm excited to bring you this conversation with Alison Jackson, who is a professional cyclist riding for EF Education Tibco SVB. She's the current Canadian national champion and had her biggest career victory this year at Roubaix, where she crossed the finish line and broke out immediately into dance, which was a media frenzy. It was something that caught my attention that I thought was so unique. So I really wanted to talk with her and get inside her head to find out what makes her tick as an athlete and how she takes the sport of professional cycling, which really can be so serious and it's so grueling and taxing on your body and your mind, and keep things fun. And to have that instinct to win a bike race, cross the line where you're absolutely cracked and still break out into some crazy dance moves. And I think this interview did exactly that. In fact, she has one quote that she lives by that will stick with you. And I'm not going to ruin it now, but when you hear it, you will know absolutely what I'm talking about. So I hope you love this interview, and please do me a favor by liking this video and also subscribing to my YouTube channel so you'll see future athlete interviews and also all training related content that will support you as a cyclist. And without further ado, let's dive into this conversation with Alison Jackson. Can you tell me how you basically started on a bison farm in Canada, got into triathlon in the first place in Canada, and worked your way to winning Paris-Roubaix Femmes?
Yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like after high school, I sort of had like three kind of dreams. So at the time I just did like an interim program that was like outdoor guiding program at a Christian college out in BC. And then I just like loved hiking mountains and rock climbing and sailing and all the things. But came back one summer, and then there was a bike in the garage, and it was someone who had worked on my parents' farm. Had left a bike. I mean, it's just like I say a Canadian Tire bike, but really it's like a Walmart bike, or I need kind of like real cheap sort of bike. But then I was like, I want to ride this to town. So I was riding it to my little coffee shop job. But I was also swimming all the time in the mornings because my dream was to learn how to surf. And if the opportunity ever came, I just wanted to make sure that I wouldn't drown. That I would be such a good swimmer that I could session the surfing all day, so that if that one opportunity comes, I would be able to surf. And then I had done this hike in the Himalayas in India, and it's like super high elevation. So we had been doing some like run training for that. So I was kind of doing these three things, and then someone in my town was like, "Oh, are you training for a triathlon?" And I was like, "A what? Like, what is that?" But they had like a little group at that time. There's this Ironman athlete in the town who took a couple of kids, taught them basically about transitions. And then I went to a race with them. He let me use his proper road bike, not my little Canadian Tire Special. And then, I qualified for Worlds. And so then I was like, oh, well, and then this is where like my life philosophy, which is like do well with what you have right now. So then I just like take stock of like what's happening in my life at the moment. And it was like, well, I have a little bit of talent for this. I also like by winning some races in the summer, had won like a wetsuit and running shoes and other things that help you with the sport. And so then I just thought, okay, I'm just going to dig into these things. And it's like also not worried that like I'm 19 at the time, that like, oh, maybe this is like too late to start or any of those kind of like barriers. It was just, okay, what do I have right now? I'm going to dive into those things. Also being a student. So then this time I started studying kinesiology actually at university. So I had a coach for a little bit of time, but basically he was just like, well, join a swim team, join a cycling club, join a run team. But the swim and the run team I linked up with had a whole bunch of university athletes there. And I was like, oh, this is great. The next week, they all show up with the same jackets because they were all from a university program that had just started, and they had sent their athletes to train with the coach that I had chosen. But then they let me ride the bus with them to this cross country race, and I won. And so then the scholarship offer came in. So then I went to Trinity Western University, and then really became like a great runner. The coach was just like, he's a great coach. Won like the 3K Canada West Championship for my last 2 years when I was there. But the first year I got lapped in that race. So it was like, you really come from like losing and then just like working hard, or yeah, really becoming a runner. Yeah, always when I was with the runners, I just wanted to be a runner. And when I was with the cyclists, all these guys kept, trying to get me to race. So at the end of my university, I just wanted to be a pro athlete. Yeah, I wanted to be a pro athlete, and I also had the Olympic dream. And triathlon, my swim was just never good enough to make the Olympics. So then I kind of was looking at running or cycling, like, could I, have Olympic qualifying times, or, how does that work? I've never done just one sport. I was always busy doing all the triathlon training. But I went to BC Super Week, which was a bunch of crit racing out in Vancouver, and won a bunch of the races. And so then someone said, "Oh, like teams will be calling you," and I was like, "Okay." So I sat on my couch, which is so funny when I think of it now, because in cycling, you send out resumes, like you make an effort, you make connections. But thankfully, like other people were looking out for me, and I did get a call, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna try. And then it was another, like, do well with what you have right now. So okay, I've got this contract offer. I'm gonna just go all in cycling and see what happens. And then the short story is, when there was an opportunity to win, I did. And then I was given more opportunities uh, to win, and I did. And then, yeah, that's really how the flow of my career has been, all the way up the ranks in cycling.
It's incredible. Do well with what you have right now. It's almost a better said version of my start moving forward because it's less vague, and it is exactly it is all that you can do, right? No matter whether it's athletics or whether it's your career or being with your family or any type of situation that you're in, you have to do the best you can with what you're given at this moment. That's incredible. I'm definitely going to use that in the future.
Nice. I think it also, like, it really allows me to stay positive, because I think a lot of times we can see the barriers, maybe, or like, oh, it's not going to work out because, or for me, like, I signed my first contract, cycling contract, when I was 25. In the European sort of cycling scene, that's really old.
Mhm.
Um, so you could look at these like different barriers, or like, oh, and sometimes those seem insurmountable. But I think when you say, do well with what you have right now, then it allows you, yeah, to have an action plan. And I think that's also, start moving forward. It allows you to look at something and say, I'm going to lean into that. I'm
Mm.
going to, work on this part. And the other stuff that you can't control, you just leave it. And then keeping the positive headspace, you get to see the opportunities that you have, not the barriers. And I think that's, yeah, a beautiful mindset, a beautiful way to live.
And you
Yeah.
you displayed that in your race at Paris Roubaix as well, because when you guys had established a breakaway, there was a very small gap for a very long time. And you were basically cheering everybody on, like, hey, this is our opportunity. This is what we have right now. And if we work together, one of us can win. If we don't actually
Yeah.
seize this moment right now, which is maybe I'm getting too cliche with the Carpe Diem stuff, but if we don't do this, we're not going to, none of us are going to have the victory that we're all looking for, or the odds are going to get even slimmer. So I think
Yeah.
it's amazing you say that, because we have video documentation of you living it out under a crazy stressful situation. And that's basically what allowed you to get into the position where you had the most savage sprint toward the line and won Paris-Roubaix. And I think there's incredible documentation of that through videos from your team. I'll definitely link a couple in the description so that people can go and watch that. But I am really curious about some more specifics with your performance, because obviously your mindset is there. And so I want to know what the physical is doing. Now, before Paris-Roubaix, or let's just say any insane one-day race, what was your warm-up, or what is your warm-up like to get your body ready for a day like that?
Yeah. I mean, in cycling, because we have such like a long neutral, or usually we have a neutral, so you can kind of warm up in that space. Really, you have to look at like what the course is like. If it's a really like going to be a hectic, fast start, or your job is really at the beginning of the race, then maybe you get on the rollers, do a little bit before getting into the race. Any activation stuff, I usually don't won't do so much on race day. I'll do day before, and that'll be like some core things. And part of that is just like we travel together as a team on the bus, and I just yeah, focus on kind of like the race tactic mindset. But also, we're always back of the bus, playing the music, having a dance party, keeping like the I guess yeah, the good times going. But I think more
Yeah.
so it's like when when I feel like I'll say like jazzy, but like when you feel like a little bit like spicy, like then I feel like you're ready to sort of like attack or react to the moments of the race. When you kind of like get nervous or have a bit of, maybe it's like race fear, then
Mhm.
you'll hesitate. And when you're a bike racer, yeah, I perform better when I kind of have that spiciness or that attack mindset. So
So you basically counteract any potential nerves or anxiety that a race could bring to anybody by getting quote unquote spicy, which is just starting to move your body, turn on some music, and it's funny because you are physically moving, which obviously helps your mental get somewhere as well. I mean, our
mhm.
physical affects our mental so much, but bringing the fun component and doing it in a way that you enjoy that brings good energy to everyone around you, it does seem like the perfect scenario. Now, I'll be honest, I don't see myself turning on music and dancing before a race, but the fact that you do and you can is probably the one of the biggest advantages that you have. And I think that's really rad. And we have video documentation of this. We see it. And really, if you're in a quarter squat, legs are moving in and out, torso's rotating, arms are up in the air like half of your dance moves, then that's a pretty good warm up. I think from a from a physiology standpoint, we're getting hips, we're getting core, you're breathing, you're moving, you're smiling. It's about as good as a warm up could be. So it's really not far off probably what a perfect uh, training plan would look like.
It's so funny to like break it down and like the yeah, not physiology, but the yeah, angles of movement thrown shapes, but it sounds so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, well, not to almost make more out of it than it is, but if you really think about it, it's like, oh gosh, this is actually not that different than a stretch you would give somebody if you're doing a dynamic warm up or some leg swings or some. I mean, swimmers are really known for doing a ton of arm swinging variations before they jump in the pool and everything. So yeah, it's not far off. I think it's a good idea.
Well, it's yeah, funny with the coach that I work with. So a lot of times, right, we will have like, either core or body weight stuff like set into the program, or yoga or some other things, because I think like as cyclists we're so linear in our movement that it's really good to just do something on a different plane that creates like body balance. But I have always been doing things on different planes. So, I used to do a little bit yoga more often, and now it really just is like a ton of dance, or whether it's even like actual dance classes or just like making up my own things or whatever, or just like trying to learn, yeah, TikToks or like choreography that's just like on YouTube or music videos before or whatever. But now my coach, it'll be less like sometimes it's less structured of like do this like core or whatever, and it'll just be like practice TikToks, or on Training
Mhm.
Peaks we have this like pie of like how much percentage is for like cycling and how much is for strength work, and we have one that's like TikTok,
That's
which is more a little bit more of like a joking way to do it, but yeah, I think like, I mean, also maybe knock on wood or whatever, but like I'm rarely injured, or I've never really had like a chronic injury, or even like I come out of crashes and I'm like pretty good. And I think part of it, I'm gonna knock it out to being a farm kid, and you're just like tough,
yeah.
resilient, or you've got good bones, or also, I didn't start cycling until later, so I think I've got some really good bone density from other like movements before then. But then I think it's also just like I'm really limber. I mean, from doing dance or gymnastics as a background, um, I don't have all this like. tightness that, if you crash and your arm kind of goes in a weird way, well, my arm has been going in that weird way in a dance move, the day before. So I think, yeah, I just have to attribute sort of like this like holistic body movement stuff to just, yeah, being, free from injury.
It's something that's hard to quantify, but it is so real when you start looking at things a little bit closer from impact and your resilience toward that. Once you have better bone density or better mobility, if you're ever tumbling, just from the different planes of motion you mentioned with your tendons, your ligaments, your joints, all of that can be built off of the bike. And to be honest, it's really hard to do on the bike as well. And so having that balance, it does make you longer term more resilient, kind of like you described, even in other interviews. I think the later start to cycling is interesting to think about. It's almost like you have less time in that single plane of motion. So maybe that's an advantage at this point. But you've been riding for, well over 10 years at a high level at this point. So I think that your base of being a well-rounded human and athlete has probably served you. But I think what's more important is that you continue to do it even
Mm.
against a lot of the dogma that's out there, which is just like just ride more or whatever. And you've also said that you do enjoy the hecticness of racing, which I thought was pretty rad and probably pretty necessary. Can you give me an example of what a hectic moment would be in the peloton, or maybe one of the more hectic moments you've had out there while racing?
I love saying like embrace the chaos. Like I love the chaos. And
Yeah.
actually some like former teammates and other and current teammates like will laugh at me or joke at me about creating chaos in the peloton. Um or if there is no chaos, then sometimes I create it, and whether that's like just kind of being joking with others, like bumping into them or whatever. It's just like I think that's just like when I say you got to create this like spicy attitude. I just love it. It sort of like gives me a giggle, a little bit of a laugh. But I mean, when you're coming into any sort of positioning moment in a European bike race where it's like you're with 180 riders, people are fighting. So there's a bit of desperation that you got to be there. You're
Mhm.
going faster because now you're trying to race each other to get to this corner. So like the risk gets higher, the risk involved of like crashing or, it feels more dangerous even. But I love it. I think like when I start feeling those feelings, I just keep rising to that level basically. And I think that's also why I was successful when I came straight into European racing, is because I didn't know the courses like the Europeans just like know like at the back of their hand. I just could feel the energy rising in the group, and I would just match it. So if they're getting more intense and fighting a little bit more, getting a little closer to you, I'm gonna race that level. I'm gonna fight back in that same with that same energy. And then I think like sometimes it's also like you're maybe it's like descending and you're going pretty fast and you're like, well, this is either gonna be totally awesome or really bad. And most of the time I get totally awesome. And then after you get through that moment, then you're like, then I think the adrenaline and the feeling of that, it just like I love that. So or all these like near misses of near miss crash or whatever, then
Yeah.
it just like creates a great story and I love it. I thrive off of that. So and I think also most of the time in my life, I've gotten this is totally awesome, not this is really bad. And so that just like encourages me to keep
Mhm.
living in those chaotic moments or embracing those chaos, the hectic parts.
The near misses, that feeling of a front tire maybe losing traction and then regaining traction real quick and it slips a couple inches, like even that can be the most exhilarating thing. And you feel like a hero for
Yeah.
walking away from it.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
can't imagine having those moments and then going on to win a major race. It's probably got to be this compounding ball of just dopamine that just hits you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, when you won Paris-Roubaix, I think the shots I love the most are just your face of like you're not saying any words, but your mouth is open, your hands are up by your face, and there's this pure disbelief. It's like you're looking around at everybody like, is this happening right now? And so,
Yeah. It's funny
yeah,
because like in that moment, so I'll say like I'm not necessarily surprised, or like can't believe it, but it's also just this feel. It's almost like locking in that feeling that I actually did it. Because I think so many times
Yeah.
in that we recon that velodrome and I dream about what it would be like to win. So then now it's not a dream anymore. This is real life. This is actually happening to me,
Mm.
and it's so hard to win a bike race. In my 8 year career of being a professional, every year I try to win these races, and every year I go into the races believing that I can win, because how you have to enter a bike race. But then to actually do it, to nail it down, to finish across the line, it's not a dream anymore. It's actually happened, and then to be able to like soak that in, that it's mine. Yeah, wow.
It's incredible. I mean, it gives me goosebumps to think about because you are, in a way, already living out your dream of being a professional athlete before that point. And there's been wins up to that point. But there's something about that instant uh, satisfaction of the achievement being,
Mm,
of that thing being achieved that you get with athletics that you don't really get in many other areas of
right.
life or business. Like, I think when I equate it to business, it's like, okay, you finally have some crazy acquisition or buyout date, and then the money hits your account, or I don't know what it would be, or you get that client or whatever. Like, there are those moments, but there's almost nothing more clear and tangible than just a pure victory. And
Mm,
yeah, I think that's what's so special about athletics, and also knowing the highs and lows that come along with it, because so many times before that, other things can happen that you have to fight through mentally to know that the achievements are still possible. And you do such a great job with balancing, the fun and the serious side of cycling in general. And I've heard you say that, it's people can think that you're maybe not taking it seriously because you look like you're having so much fun, but when it's
right.
time to perform and train, it's time to perform and train. And so, do you have any tips for anyone before we wrap this up on maybe how they can implement that themselves?
Yeah, that's also been an interesting one to maybe convince like teammates, or team directors that I'm really taking this seriously,
Yeah.
or even sometimes like, I mean, I've always been like this, to hold sort of this balance of like really fun and then really take something seriously. And I think like I do really want to be a high achiever. So, and I really love winning or being the best. But yeah, to be able to, I think for me, the balance is really important, to be able to have fun, not take myself so seriously, and also not allow the pressure of achieving to be on me. And also, like, in the end, like, there's always going to be winners and losers, and it's okay to be either. And even though right, the goal is always to win, and we have to enter into the race or whatever we're doing with that in mind. But in the journey, we have to just allow, right? We have to, you know, take each moment and make the right choices in each of those things to hopefully lead us up to that win. And if we don't get it, it's also okay. We're gonna be okay. Like we put a good foot forward, and whatever. And I think by keeping the fun in it help. I guess like it also reminds me that winning isn't everything. And so I think it allows me to have that balance, also enjoy the chaos, enjoy the fight, enjoy even like maybe, the buzz, the fun moments, that all kind of leads up in that journey.
And that's it. I'm sorry that ended so abruptly. I mean, maybe you didn't notice it, but we didn't have a proper outro, all because the video actually cut out. And thank the Lord that it saved, because she dropped some major knowledge bombs there, some absolute nuggets of inspiration. Her life motto of do well with what you have right now is something that's really stuck with me, and something I'll continue to try and do moving forward. So I hope that you do the same. And if you need any help moving forward with your strength training to support your cycling, anything off the bike, make sure you go to dialedhealth.com, use the strength and mobility programs there. You can also fill out the program questionnaire where it will be sent to me, and I'll help you choose the perfect schedule. And I'm also available to answer your questions. So with that being said, start moving forward. We'll see you guys next time.